My parents forced me to co-sign their mortgage, just temporarily. Now I'm legally responsible for a debt they refuse to acknowledge. I still remember the exact night they brought it up because it felt like a normal family dinner at first. My mom had cooked my favorite dish and my dad kept smiling too much, like he was trying to relax me into something. I was 26, finally stable in my job and still trying to prove I wasn't a disappointment to them. They said they needed a small favor that would only last a few months. They explained they were refinancing the house to get a better rate. My dad said his credit score had dipped temporarily because of a medical bill dispute. My mom quickly added that it was just paperwork, nothing serious. They told me I would only be a co-signer, just a formality to push the loan through. They made it sound like helping family was the obvious moral choice. I hesitated, but then they brought up everything they had done for me growing up. They reminded me I had lived in that house my whole life. They said I would inherit it one day anyway. That line stuck in my head more than it should have. I asked if there was any risk at all. My dad laughed like I was being paranoid. He said, "We're your parents, why would we ever put you in danger?" That should have been the moment I walked away. Instead, I signed the documents 2 days later at a small bank branch. The loan officer barely looked at me when he explained the terms. He said my signature was just a backup guarantee. I didn't fully understand what joint liability meant at the time. I thought it meant shared responsibility, not equal burden. For the first month, everything seemed normal. My parents even thanked me again and said I saved the deal. Then the first letter came in my name. It was from the mortgage servicer, not my parents. It said the account was officially active under both borrowers. I called my mom immediately. She told me to stop worrying and that everything was being handled. She said those letters always go to both names at first. I believed her because I wanted to. 2 months later, I got another letter saying the payment was late. I froze when I read it because I assumed it was a mistake. My parents told me they had already paid it. My dad even showed me a screenshot of a transfer, but the bank statement still showed an outstanding balance. I started checking every letter more carefully after that. The tone of the notices slowly changed from reminders to warnings. Late fees started stacking up like quiet accusations. I brought it up again at dinner, trying not to sound panicked. My mom got defensive immediately. She said I was stressing them out unnecessarily. My dad said I was acting like I didn't trust my own family. That sentence made me feel guilty enough to drop it again. But the guilt didn't stop the letters from coming. One night I checked my credit report out of curiosity. What I saw made my stomach drop instantly. The mortgage wasn't just linked to me, it was fully impacting my credit score. My score had already dropped nearly 80 points. I called the bank the next morning. The representative confirmed I was a full co-borrower with equal liability. There was no distinction between me and my parents in legal responsibility. I asked who was making payments. She hesitated before saying the account showed inconsistent payment history. That word, inconsistent, felt like a warning I didn't understand yet. I went to my parents' house without telling them I was coming. My dad was home alone, sitting in front of the TV like nothing was wrong. I asked him directly if they had missed payments. He said 1 or 2 might have been late, but nothing serious. He said banks exaggerate everything. I showed him the letter about late fees and penalties. For the first time, he looked irritated instead of calm. He said I was making a big deal out of nothing. My mom called while I was there and immediately asked why I was upsetting him. It felt rehearsed, like they had already agreed on the narrative. I left more confused than when I arrived. Over the next few weeks, the situation escalated faster than I could process. I started receiving calls from debt collection departments. They weren't asking for my parents specifically, they were asking for me. Each call felt like a slow tightening around my life. I started avoiding unknown numbers completely. My parents kept insisting everything was under control. They even started acting annoyed whenever I brought it up. Then I discovered something I wasn't supposed to see. I went to their house one afternoon when they were out. I needed documents for my own peace of mind. In their home office, I found a folder labeled with the mortgage lender's name. Inside were statements I had never seen before. Some of them showed missed payments going back months. Others showed penalty restructuring requests. One document stood out more than the rest. It was a refinancing addendum I had never signed. My signature was on it, but it didn't look right. My handwriting had been copied in a way that made my hands shake. I realized then that something had crossed from negligence into something worse. When I confronted them that night, I brought the folder with me. My mom went pale the moment she saw it. My dad immediately tried to take it from my hands. He said I had no right to snoop through their home. I said I had every right because my name was on everything. That's when he finally snapped and admitted part of it. He said they needed the refinance to keep the house. He said their credit alone wasn't enough to qualify. He said I was the only reason the bank approved the loan. My mom added quickly that it was still temporary in their minds. She said once things stabilized, they would remove my name. I asked how they planned to do that. They didn't answer. The silence said more than anything else they had told me. I went home that night unable to sleep at all. I kept replaying every conversation, searching for where I missed the truth. A week later, I got a notice of default. It said foreclosure proceedings could begin within 60 days. My parents acted shocked when I told them. They said the bank must be mistaken. They said I should handle it since it's partly under my name. That sentence broke something in me I didn't fully understand yet. I realized they didn't see it as shared responsibility anymore. They saw it as my problem. I decided to go back to the bank in person. This time I requested the full loan file. The employee hesitated but eventually printed what I needed. What I saw confirmed my worst fear. Every missed payment was legally tied to me equally. There was no separation in liability whatsoever. The loan structure made me as responsible as the primary borrower. I asked if there was any way to remove myself. The answer was immediate and blunt. Only full refinancing or payoff could release me. I walked out of the bank feeling like my life had shifted permanently. My parents called me 10 times that evening. I didn't answer any of them. When I finally spoke to them, I told them I needed repayment plans from them directly. My father laughed like I had said something ridiculous. He said family doesn't charge each other like creditors. My mom said I was being dramatic over paperwork. That was the moment I realized they were not going to fix this. The next weeks became a cycle of arguments and silence. They avoided details and focused on guilt instead. They reminded me of my childhood constantly. They said I was abandoning them in their time of need. But every reminder felt like another layer of manipulation. I started talking to a lawyer quietly. The lawyer confirmed everything in blunt legal terms. I was fully exposed to the debt with no protection. He said this was unfortunately common with cosign arrangements. He also said proving coercion would be difficult. That word coercion stayed in my mind for days. I kept thinking about how calm they were when I signed. How rehearsed the entire conversation felt in hindsight. How quickly they dismissed my questions. Then something unexpected arrived in the mail. It was a second mortgage notice. Not the original loan, but an additional line of credit tied to the property. My name was on that too. I had never even heard of it before that moment. When I confronted my parents, my mother finally broke down crying. But it wasn't an apology. It was frustration that I was making things harder. My father said they used the equity to cover medical expenses and debts. He said they had no other choice. He said I should understand because I was family. But what I heard was that my signature had become their safety net. I left that night knowing nothing would be resolved through conversation. Months passed with payments falling further behind. My credit continued to collapse. I started getting notices about potential wage garnishment. My life outside the mortgage began shrinking under pressure. Eventually, foreclosure proceedings officially started. The house I grew up in was now legally at risk of being taken. My parents acted like it was a temporary scare. I saw it as the final stage of something they refused to admit. The lawyer advised me to document everything. Every message, every conversation, every contradiction. As I compiled it all, a pattern emerged I couldn't ignore. They had never intended for this to be temporary. They had structured everything around my credit from the beginning. I realized the word help had been used as a disguise for necessity, not mine, but theirs. One final meeting happened at a cafe because I refused to go to their house again. I told them I might have to force a legal settlement. My father went quiet for a long time. Then he said I was choosing money over family. My mom said I would regret destroying what we built, but what we built had already been broken long before I signed anything. I left them there with no resolution and no apology. The foreclosure notice arrived 2 weeks later with my name on top. I stared at it longer than anything else I had ever read. It didn't feel like paperwork anymore. It felt like the final confirmation of a role I never agreed to fully live. Now I'm preparing for a legal battle I never wanted. And the strangest part is realizing they still believe I am the one betraying them.